I've decided to do a review on the ISR intake manifolds for the RB25 and possibly RB20. There are only slight differences between the two heads. So I'll dive in and give you the parts list that they show on their page when they're selling it, but they don't exactly tell you what everything is and where it goes. There's no instructions to put this together. So in the kit, we'll include all of these hoses that are just the water lines to go to the manifold. So they go to all these parts here. So those go into the head. This is the same tube diameter as the stock radiator for a Skyline, or probably whatever older Nissan you're throwing this into. This is the water temp sensor stock, perfectly sized. This is a 12 by 1.25, and I know that for a fact because I had just tested the oil drain plug and the other side. They're the exact same size. This is as well. I will be getting a different fitting because first thing you should do is just get the size of these. Do not install them. They're incredibly weak fittings. I was kind of surprised. Mine just snapped off in there with it wasn't too much force. This one's even worse. This one seems to be a tapered pipe thread, and this is after me drilling it out. So just so you know, these are incredibly light, but that's all right. I'm going to be threading this into a 1/8 NPT for a map sensor. So that's what I'll be doing. I don't know what this original thread size is because I can't measure it anymore. This one is the M12 by 1.25. The company does include a block-off plate for an IACV, or an IAC, idle control valve, whatever you want to call it. But this is the direct mate to the actual idle control. So it would fit right on the bottom. Obviously flipped around. This is for your throttle cable, so you can lock it into place. We'll pull this. Most of the rest of the hardware they include is actually pretty good. These aren't just cheap hose clamps. The standoffs could be a little bit tougher, but that's okay. In all, these lines fit in there really pretty well. Really no burrs, good machine surface. I really like the welded look of this whole thing. Throttle body, being a 90mm, is really pretty large. So this is my hand, and it fits all the way in that tube. And then you got a adapter plate with the kit. This adapter plate to put your throttle position sensor on. So this is very simple. You also get a different type. I think this is some sort of other throttle position sensor or just a block-off plate for it. I don't know what this bracket's for. They don't tell you. And then this is an extra bolt, I guess, for this bracket. If I would have to guess, I think this would probably be for a fuel pressure regulator. They give you more fittings, and that's probably for the fuel rail they give you. Maybe a third for the bottom. I put the plug port in instead because I'm just going to have pressure go from one side to the other. So no matter how you want to set this up with however many cc's you have in your injector, has to be a 14mm head and seat. You can get an extension, but when I got these, I guess I didn't read ISR's website. It says 48 or another dimension in the 60s for length. So I ended up cutting my standoffs and with slight modification, but it's not bad. You really couldn't tell. I just chopped them and fitted to size, so there's no wiggle, no play. It's not pulling these out of here, right? So these are all doing good. So 14mm injectors, right? You can get individual wiring harnesses for these to plug them right into your RB set. If you have RB25 or an RB20 in the R32, you get them as individual wires like I did. So you get these from Wiring Specialties. Really nice, short, quick harness. I think all these are like 45 bucks. So that's how you're gonna deal with your top feed injectors there. WiringSpecialties.com is where I went. No, I'm not selling their product, but feel free to sponsor me. This is what the bay looks like without the manifold in there currently. So I have a little bit of wiring to do, but here's what is going to connect to your manifold. So you have a few boost lines here, right, or vacuum lines, I guess I should say. You have your brake booster line, which I replaced with a different one. So it's going to curve right up, go to the bottom, and then you have these two as well. One is for a fuel pressure regulator, and do your research in your setup. You don't want your boost or your fuel pressure fluctuating your vacuum. So I'm going to give this its own line and connect these two because these are less sensitive than this. So it's basically the same setup, but another part of it is if you have your every single vacuum system that you have in your car has to go into the bottom of the manifold. So this is the PCV, and I'm going to plumb this in with the brake booster so that I can still pull some vacuum out of the head. Catch cans over there. So this whole setup will work pretty nicely. From the tank, we have the fuel filter. We have an AN6 line. These are AN6 fittings that fit those, just so you know. They fit the manifold. So this will go right onto it, and then it'll go through the manifold to the pressure regulator, which then has the return. So you have another 6AN line here with another fitting. That's going to go, these are going to be both sides of the fuel rail. As for wiring, you're going to need to make your throttle position sensor wires a lot longer. So you can see that I extended mine by about a foot. So this is pretty simple. If you don't know your wiring, have somebody help you out. You really don't want to mess these up. So this is just my own custom splicing, and I think it turned out pretty well. So that's one thing that you need to rewire. This is part of the injector harness. So those adapters over there are going to be fitting right onto this. And then there are a few more like that too. This is part of the idle air control. I had to lengthen this as well by probably about 8 inches to a foot. So that's a little difference there because this doesn't fit around the manifold perfectly. I modified the standoffs. I just cut them a bit and made sure that everything was fitting perfectly. While I stood 1 or 2 injectors in there, slid it in and probably tested it like 5 times. So now it's ready to install. If you completed the engine and had the intake manifold on there like I did, and when you go drop the engine in, look out for your master cylinder for the clutch. This right here scraped the hell out of my manifold, and I'll show you what that looks like. It may not look like much from there, but it's actually pretty serious. I'm definitely gonna have to just I'll buff it out before I put it back on, but since we were checking everything else on the engine, and that's such a small part, it really didn't stop it, but it just scratched it up a lot. So look out for the clearances between those. When it is installed, you have about that much clearance. All the manifold hardware is pretty good quality. Nothing feels like it's gonna break like the fittings did. So I would say the only issue with this manifold is just make sure you get fitting sizes, because they don't tell you, and do your research in your injectors so you don't have to cut your standoffs. So this is partially my mistake, but hey, it fits pretty streamlined, and I don't think there's going to be an issue at all.